Welcome to the world of Palworld, where you can build epic bases, tame adorable or terrifying pals, and take on tower bosses with your ever-growing arsenal of tools and weapons. Sure, farming resources and unlocking shiny new tech is fun, but have you ever dived into the game's dungeons? If not, you're seriously missing out. These mysterious hotspots scattered across the Palpagos Islands are packed with surprises, from hidden loot to ancient treasures. But not all dungeons are created equal. Some are just way cooler and more rewarding than others. Don't worry though, we've got you covered. Today, we're ranking every single dungeon in Palworld, so you know exactly where to spend your time and energy. Whether you're hunting down ancient civilization parts to upgrade your gear, or just want to test your skills against some beefed-up alpha pals, we'll guide you through the best and not-so-great options. Stick around to find out which dungeons are worth your grind, and which ones you might want to skip. Let's jump in. I'm quickly moving on to the video. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching. Alright, let's talk about the Isolated Island Cavern and Hillside Cavern dungeons in Palworld. These two dungeons are like your cozy starter zones. Nothing too intense, but packed with value for early game adventurers. Both of these are conveniently located near the starting regions, so if you're still figuring out your strategy, they're a perfect choice. Clearing these dungeons is as easy as it gets, making them ideal for grabbing some quick rewards like gold coins and other treasures from the dungeon chests. Oh, and don't forget the resource deposits. Ore, sulfur, and those handy paldium fragments are everywhere here. Sure, you can automate farming with a base later on, but these dungeons are perfect for stocking up early. Plus, if you're up for a little boss battle, you might even stumble across a small lotus flower in the alpha boss area. Now, here's the deal with the pals you'll find in these dungeons. They're okay. Don't expect anything mind-blowing, but you've got a couple of highlights. The Alpha Tombat and Fuddler are decent choices for mining and can give your team a solid early game boost. On the other hand, the Mao and Vixie boss variants, that's where it gets interesting. These two can really pull their weight, especially if you're setting up a gold coin farm in the ranch. In fact, Mao in its base form is super common here, making it an easy pick if you're just starting out. That said, these dungeons won't hold up much in the long run. As you progress and start exploring bigger, better dungeons, the Isolated Island Cavern and Hillside Cavern will feel like stepping stones. But hey, every adventure has to start somewhere, right? So if you're just getting your bearings in Palworld, grab your gear, dive into these caverns, and enjoy some low-stress looting while you're at it. Alright, let's dive into the Ravine Grotto dungeons in Palworld. These dungeons are tucked away in two specific regions, Investigator's Fork and Ascetic Falls. While there aren't many of them, they're definitely worth checking out if you're looking to grab some solid resources. Think of them as the middle ground between early game exploration and more advanced looting. You'll still find some ore, sulfur, and those oh-so-useful paldium fragments here, but don't get your hopes up too high, because the quantities are noticeably smaller compared to previous dungeons. The standout resource here? Coal deposits. If you're not quite ready to set up an automated farm for coal yet, this is a great spot to stock up. Now, let's talk about loot of a different kind. Small lotus flowers. These little gems are incredibly useful for making remedies to boost your stats. So, whether you're planning your next big pal battle or just want to prep for tougher zones, these flowers are a nice bonus. The Ravine Grotto dungeons really shine though when it comes to their pals. Unlike the earlier dungeons, you'll start to encounter some decent dark pals here. Nox and Daydream are common finds and a great way to add some dark damage to your team early on. Mao and Fuddler also make an appearance, keeping the roster familiar if you've explored the Isolated Island Cavern or Hillside Cavern. But here's the kicker. Alpha Pals. This dungeon gives you a shot at encountering both Alpha Nox and Alpha Cognito. If you're looking for heavy hitters with a dark flair, these two are worth pursuing. As for the other Alpha Pals, honestly, they're nothing to write home about since you can find them pretty easily in other areas. So, unless you're a completionist, you might want to focus your energy elsewhere. Overall, the Ravine Grotto dungeons offer a nice mix of resources and pals that'll give you a leg up in your Palworld adventure. Let's talk about one of the standout dungeon types in Palworld, the Mountain Stream Grotto dungeons. If you're trekking through Mount Floppy, Massandra Forest, or the Frostbound Mountains, you're bound to stumble across one of these hidden gems. Think of them as the perfect pit stop for mid-game adventurers. Why? because they're packed with resources like ore, sulfur, and those ever-handy paldium fragments. Oh, and don't forget the chests. They're scattered throughout and brimming with random loot. It's like a surprise party in every corner. Plus, you might even come across small lotus flowers here, a key ingredient for whipping up remedies. Handy, right? Now, while the resources are solid, what really makes this dungeon a must-visit is the pals you can encounter. First up, there's Katris, your all-in-one multitasker. Need handiwork done? Check. Medicine production? Covered. Transporting goods? Katris has your back, day or night. And they're not the only ones pulling their weight here. Felbat is another superstar, particularly if you're focusing on medicine production. Meanwhile, Loopmoon shines in handiwork, and Grintail is your go-to for gathering. These pals are game changers for setting up a thriving base, trust me. But here's the kicker. All three of these pals, Katris, Felbat, and Loopmoon, have alpha versions, and they're absolute powerhouses. If you're lucky enough to snag one, they'll take your operations to the next level. Alpha Katris is especially versatile, but don't sleep on Alpha Robinquill either. That pal is like a Swiss Army knife for your base, covering everything from planting to lumbering. So, whether you're grinding for resources or hunting down pals, the Mountain Stream Grotto dungeons should be high on your list. Alright, let's dive into the Mountain Stream Grotto dungeons in Palworld. These dungeons are scattered across some of the most beautiful regions in the game: Mount Flopi, Mosandra Forest, and the Frostbound Mountains. If you're the type of player who loves resource farming while exploring stunning underground scenery, this dungeon is going to feel like a jackpot. You've got ore, sulfur, and paldium fragments aplenty, perfect for crafting and upgrading gear. And let's not forget the chests scattered throughout, packed with random loot to keep things exciting. Bonus, you can find small lotus flowers here, which are crucial for making remedies. Trust me, having a stockpile of those will save you later. Now, while the resources are solid, the real treasure here is the roster of pals you can encounter. Katris is a standout, popping up as a fairly common find. This little buddy is a multitasking pro, excelling in handiwork, medicine production, and even transporting. Oh, and here's the kicker. Katris can work through the night. Talk about dedication. But that's not all. You'll also come across Felbat, who's great for medicine production, and Loopmoon, who shines in handiwork. And for those who love gathering, Grintail has your back. They're all solid additions to any mid-game base. What really makes this dungeon special, though, are the alpha versions of these pals. Running into an alpha Felbat, Loopmoon, or Grintail, that's like hitting the pal lottery. They're incredibly versatile and powerful for their professions. And if you're lucky enough to snag an alpha Robinquill here, well, you've basically hit the jackpot of all jackpots. Robinquill is a jack of all trades, covering everything from planting to lumbering to medicine production. If you're building up your base and need some pals who can do it all, this dungeon should be on your must-visit list. The Cavern of the Dunes dungeons. If you're exploring the Sand Dunes region in Palworld and craving a challenge, this is the place to be. Picture this: scorching heat, shimmering sands, and a dungeon packed with more resources than you can carry. We're talking ore, coal, and the coveted paldium fragments. But the real treasure here? Large lotus flowers. These beauties are essential for crafting elixirs and give this dungeon a massive edge over others. Trust me, you'll want to stock up. Just keep in mind, the enemies here are no pushovers. Expect a tough fight at every turn. Now let's talk pals. The Cavern of the Dunes. Dungeons is like a jackpot for fire pals. It's almost surprising they're not hanging out in the volcanic caverns instead. You'll find Pyron Noct and Blazehowl Noct roaming around as common encounters. Pyron Noct is a speedy little ground mount with fire and dark attacks, great for both travel and combat. And then there's Blazehowl Noct, a kindler extraordinaire. This guy can make your campfires roar while still bringing the heat in battles. But if you're looking for something rarer, keep your eyes peeled for alpha pals like Reptiro, who's fantastic at mining and kindling. Oh, and let's not forget Ragnahawk, one of the fastest flying mounts, and Bushi, who's a jack of all trades when it comes to professions. So, whether you're here to gather resources, recruit powerful pals, or just test your survival skills, the Cavern of the Dunes has something for everyone. Just remember to gear up, stay cool, and keep your eyes on the prize. This dungeon will test your limits, but the rewards? Totally worth it. Alright, let's talk about one of the coolest, quite literally, dungeon areas in Palworld, the Sacred Mountain Cavern Dungeons. These frosty challenges are tucked away in the iciest corners of the Palpagos Islands, like No Man's Trail, pristine snowfield, and the land of absolute zero. Just getting there is half the battle. Your survival skills will be tested by the freezing temperatures before you even set foot inside. But trust me, it's worth the trek. Why? Because these dungeons are one of the rare places you can snag pure quartz, a key material for crafting those high-tech circuit boards. Oh, and don't forget to pick up large lotus flowers while you're there. These beauties are essential for crafting some of the most powerful elixirs in the game. Now let's talk pals, because the Sacred Mountain Cavern dungeons are stacked with some top-tier options for your pal deck. First up, we've got Lunaris, an absolute gem for handiwork enthusiasts. With a level 3 in handiwork, they're basically the MVP of crafting. Then there's Moraith, a solid choice if you're looking for a reliable dark-type mount. Need help farming high-quality cloth? Sibelius has you covered through the ranch, and if you're lucky, you might encounter some alpha bosses like Quivern, whose dragon attacks pack a serious punch, or Cryolinks, a pal that's perfect for lumbering and cooling tasks. Basically, if you're after diversity and utility, this dungeon delivers in spades. But here's the kicker. These dungeons are tough, and they don't hold your hand. You'll need to prep carefully, gear up for the cold, bring plenty of healing items, and maybe a backup pal or two in case things go sideways. The rewards, though, absolutely worth it. Whether it's the rare resources, the amazing elixirs, or the lineup of powerful pals, the Sacred Mountain Cavern dungeons are one of the most rewarding adventures in Palworld. So suit up, head out, and see if you can conquer the chill while building your dream pal deck. Let's dive into one of the standout dungeons in Palworld, the Cherry Blossom Cave Dungeons. Nestled on the gorgeous Sakurajima Island, this dungeon made its debut in the Sakurajima update. And let me tell you, it's a stunner. Picture a sprawling cavern filled with blooming cherry blossoms. Yes, it's as magical as it sounds. But it's not just about the aesthetics. This dungeon is packed with resources. Think ore, paldium fragments, coal, and the coveted pure quartz. If resource gathering is your thing, you're in for a treat. Oh, and don't forget to stock up on large lotus flowers. They're essential for crafting elixirs and make this dungeon as versatile as the Cavern of the Dunes and Sacred Mountain Cavern dungeons. What really sets the Cherry Blossom Cave dungeons apart, though, is the pals. And wow, the roster here is impressive. You've got Bushinoct, Wixennoct, and Catris Ignis. These pals aren't just cool, they're practical. They bring abilities like kindling, medicine production, and even transporting to the table, making them fantastic additions to your base. And guess what? If you're lucky, you might encounter them as alpha bosses, which is always a thrill. Keep an eye out for Helzafir Lux, perfect for powering generators, and Dogen, who's an absolute jack of all trades. It's like building a dream team of utility. The best part? This dungeon is perfect for adventurers looking to balance exploration and base building. Whether you're here for the stunning views, the endless resources, or to snag some top-tier pals, the Cherry Blossom Cave Dungeons delivers on all fronts. If you haven't checked it out yet, grab your gear, head to Sakurajima Island, and see for yourself why this dungeon is quickly becoming a fan favorite in Palworld. The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.